Good morning and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici. Joining me today is Peregin. Our headlines of today are as follows. Magbridge owner revealed to be mother-in-law of Chinese and Malta negotiator. Magistrate wants to know leaked photos and messages from Jürgen Fenech's phone. Malta's nurses lament Mount Carmel hospital deterioration. Mabel Strickland's nephew says he's seeking legal advice over Times of Malta's printing equipment purchase. And news straight from this morning, Keach denied bail over corruption and money laundering charges. But that's not it for today. We've got a really special episode ahead. We've got an interview with former PN leader and current EPP Secretary General Simon Busuttil, sort of thing about all the events that have happened recently. You know, he played such an integral part in it. It's going to be really interesting to hear what he has to say, so stay tuned. Our first story, the owner of secret company Magbridge has finally been revealed. For those of you out there who don't remember, Magbridge was listed as the target client of the offshore Panamanian companies belonging to Keach and Conrad Mitzi. It was predicted to at least give those companies around €5,000 per day. An investigation by Times of Malta and Reuters revealed that the owner is Chen Cheng, a Chinese negotiator who worked on multi-million euro deals by NM Malta. The investigation found that the company is actually owned by Chen Cheng's mother-in-law, Tang Xiaomin, and owned by a parent company, Dow Media. It's really interesting because the investigation found that Dow Media received about €1 million from 17 Black. That's the company, the Dubai-based company of Jürgen Fenech that was also listed as a target client of Keach and Conrad Mitzi's accounts. The €1 million transfer came soon after the controversial NM Malta purchase of a Montenegro wind farm, where they overpaid massive amounts, and there are serious suspicions that kickbacks could have taken place. The companies themselves were closed 2 months after Fenech was revealed to be the owner of 17 Black, raising a real lot of questions about the case itself and the role of government in the deal. And raising obviously a lot of questions about a lot of the allegedly corrupt deals that might have happened. One really interesting detail I found, at least, Chris, I don't know about you, was that it actually finally got confirmed, that Magbridge stands for Malta-China Bridge. Jürgen Fenech had said that to investigators, raising concerns, maybe E-grant actually does stand for election grant. I don't know about you.
Yeah, look, I think it's obviously again, another milestone in all of these revelations. We had been asking for years who owns Magbridge, and now we know who does. And now that we have, and it comes also at a time when we start to understand the modus operandi of how Keach operated with certain deals, looking at the Times deal as one of them. So yeah, it's no surprise that there are these connections. However, this does give the story more significance. It starts to question what is China's role in this. How much did Joseph Muscat know? How much did China know? How much did the company that Chen Cheng worked for, Accenture, know? There's more responsibility now to be carried in terms of these stories, and I'll just link it on to the next story. So our next story is about Magistrate Rachel Montebello, who's asking to investigate the leaks from Jürgen Fenech's phone. Jürgen Fenech being the alleged mastermind or one of the co-conspirators in the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. Now, as we know, for weeks, Times of Malta has been releasing stories about a number of key prominent figures and their relationship with Jürgen Fenech. The magistrate is saying, this information must be coming from Jürgen Fenech's phone, and there was a ban on this kind of information so that it doesn't prejudice the case. And there's a clear warning that this could prejudice the case. However, we need to keep in mind the other side of this as well, which is that if it weren't for media leaks, we wouldn't know any of the things that we're starting to know now, including these magisterial inquiries that were started from leaks of FIAU documents, which are also secret documents, which also meant a lot of people were risking breaking the law to get this information out. However, when you've got a context of institutions not operating, then these leaks are what facilitates things to move. So there's a big issue here, between prejudicing the case and getting the public information out. One thing I would say as well is that given that the police are going to be having to investigate so many deals that took place under the 2013 onwards administration, there are going to be a lot of stories that might not make it to court, a lot of stories that might not be criminal, but might be, politically very, very relevant. So the way I see it is that it's good that a lot of this information does reach the public, because it allows voters to take more informed decisions anyway. So yeah, that's the leaks of the phone. We'll move on to the next story.
Yes, a little bit different, but Malta's Nurses Union has expressed its disappointment and disapproval at the deterioration of Mount Carmel Hospital, describing promises of refurbishment as fake news from the government. Mount Carmel Hospital is Malta's only mental health care facility and has been suffering from a lack of resources for a number of years. MUMN warned that 8 wards have closed over the last 8 years due to non-existent maintenance, a lack of proper refurbishment, raising a real lot of concerns within the institution themselves, with the union saying that now it's created a chaotic mixture of chronic patients with acute conditions all next to each other, and obviously during a pandemic. Their concerns are mostly raised because a few years ago the government had made really strong promises to refurbish the mental health care facility, pledging about €6 million to really bring it up to the 21st century, but it seems that hasn't been done. It's of little surprise to me. Mental health seemingly still isn't really a priority in this country, and no better way to describe it than Mount Carmel Hospital, which is a centuries-old institution now. I mean, even just walking past the place gives me a bit of the chills. It's a really sad situation.
On the plus side, from the COVID side, there were 63 cases yesterday and 332 recoveries, so the total number of active cases has gone down to 1,132. Seems that the semi-lockdown has worked and is reaping benefits. But we'll move on to the next story. Mabel Strickland's nephew, Robert Strickland, says he's seeking legal advice over how to get back the money that Times of Malta or Progress Press or allied newspapers was defrauded out of. So he said, his aunt must be rolling in her grave. Robert Horniel Strickland is a 14% shareholder in Allied. He's not a member of he's not a director on any of the boards, and in fact he called for the resignation of those who were members if this information proves to be correct. He signaled out Mario De Marco as well, a nationalist MP who is a member of the council of the Strickland Foundation. Mario De Marco himself has reacted to the statement. He called it a cheap shot, and he said that at the time that Adrian Hillman and Vince Bohajar were appointed in their roles, Robert Strickland himself had seconded their nominations, and that Mario De Marco himself wasn't a member of the council until after 2009. So, there's obviously ramifications behind the story that we were talking about with regard to Keach Kemry and the purchase of printing structures by Times of Malta. Maybe we'll ask Simon Busuttil about that as well in the upcoming interview. Move on to the last story.
Yes, actually Keach Kemry, in court over this case. He was in court again this morning, being denied bail over corruption and money laundering charges. Casco CEO Malcolm Sherry and accountant Robert Zamit were also denied bail this morning by Magistrate Donatella Frendodomec. However, Alfiosh Kemry, Keach Kemry's father, was actually granted bail at a €20,000 deposit and a €50,000 guarantee. Yesterday, lawyer Edward Gutz argued, that the men sort of deserved bail, claiming that there was no risk that they could either tamper with evidence or abscond from the island. The AG's office completely disagreed, noting, and quite rightly, that these men are actually charged with falsifying documentation and declaration and giving false statements, so they can't really be trusted on it. Alfio Schembri was granted bail because of his age and because of certain health requirements. His charges are also slightly different. The AG's office actually said, whereas Keith Schembri, Malcolm Sher and Robert Zammit were authors of the plan, Alfio Schembri was more a driver, So we'll see how this develops. The next sitting is on 5th April. Edward Gart in court today actually said he has a strong feeling that they'll be granted bail then. We'll obviously see how it goes. I think what's really interesting about this case is now that it's the third magistrate, right, being really stern on the judgment of Keith Schembri. We had the magistrate inquiring magistrate. We have the first magistrate to send him to bail, and now we have another magistrate also denying him bail. So it's really shaking up to be quite an interesting case. Lovin Malta will keep you updated as we can.
And with that, we're going to just cut to a clip of Simon Busuttil when he was PN leader. This is from 2018 in Parliament, when he was facing accusations after the e-grant inquiry that he was fraudist, as it was said in Parliament. We'll see what he said, and then we'll speak to him afterwards in our interview.
Nixtieq niġbidlek l-attenzjoni illi meta reġa' daħal il-Prim Ministru biddel il-verżjoni ta' dak illi qal fil-preżenza tagħna. U dak li qal fil-preżenza tagħna fil-bidu u li fuqu jintlab ruling minn għandek huwa dan, illi jiena frodist illi niċħad kategorikament. Illi jien iffalsifikajt firem illi niċħad kategorikament. 3. Fuqek ser nitfaħħa lanqas tersaq lejn Malta ma tkun tista' teddida kbira pubblika fil-pubbliku. Fuq dan tlabt ruling, mhux fuq il-ħmerijiet li ġijajt issa l-Prim Ministru wara u biddel il-verżjoni f'5 minuti ta' dak li qal hu stess. Niskuża ruħi illi jiena emozzjonat, Sinjura President, ma jistax ikun inħalli kalunja bħal din għaddejja b'dan il-mod.
Hi, welcome back, and thank you very much, Simon Busuttil, for joining us.
My pleasure.
How are you? How are you?
I'm great.
I'm
doing great.
It's been a while.
I'm great. I'm here for a few days for Easter, and then I'll go back to Brussels. But I'm following what's going on here. It's incredible.
So let me start with that. As we know, this morning, Keith Schembri has been denied bail. What did it feel like for you, watching Keith Schembri being driven to prison, seeing him denied bail, hearing yesterday that we finally know who owns Magbridge and it's related to the Chinese negotiator? How are you feeling?
It gave me a huge feeling of hope that finally we can look forward to justice, that the best days of justice in our country are ahead of us. It's a pity that it has taken so long to get here, because all the information that's coming out now, I published 5 years ago. When I went to the magistrates, this is exactly the information that I presented, and I was vilified, ridiculed, insulted for that, and we didn't have to wait this long.
Does it mean that the institutions are working now?
No, because the institutions have been forced to take him to court by a court order that I requested.
Explain that a little bit in
so,
legal terms without getting too complicated.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, you used a legal mechanism that had never been used before to force the magistrate's hand?
Indeed, yes. So let's go back to 2017. It's in the thick of the election campaign, May 2017. The election has been called. I receive a leaked report, FIU report, concluding that Schembri is involved in money laundering activities. I received 2 such reports. One had related to the passport scheme, the second related to the Hillman kickbacks. This is in the thick of an election campaign. I made a press conference, and in any other country, when you present such a document, the Prime Minister resigns because it's his Chief of Staff, for heaven's sake.
So you were expecting him to resign?
Absolutely, absolutely. If your Chief of Staff and you're the Prime Minister has been caught red-handed in money laundering activities, you don't just kick out the Chief of Staff. You take the responsibility yourself. And if that happened, just imagine in the thick of an election campaign, the story of our country, the history of our country would have been written differently.
And instead, Joseph Muscat was re-elected with a massive majority.
Indeed.
And he reappointed Keith Schembri as his Chief of Staff. And you had to resign.
Joseph Muscat took a very deliberate and deceptive, fraudulent, I would say, stance, which is to deny everything, even though I was taking box files of evidence to court, to deny everything, to ridicule me, to say that what I was saying was pure lies and invention, and effectively defraud the campaign. Because people went to vote with the Prime Minister telling them that I had been lying, whereas the truth was the opposite. Whereas the truth is that what I said was in fact true.
So do you think that the election victory of 2017 was a fraudulent victory?
Absolutely. It was a fraudulent victory because he went to an election he should never have gone to. He went to an election saying that all these accusations that we now know are true and have at least led to prosecution, let the court judge, obviously, presumption of innocence, etc. But there's enough for it to go to court.
The box files weren't empty.
They were there already then, and the box files weren't empty, and Joseph Muscat knew about their content because I made it public. So history would have been written differently. Instead of having the institutions work, they failed on 2 levels. On the official institutional level, that is to say, the police did not investigate, the Attorney General did nothing, the courts did nothing, the institutions didn't work, they jammed because it was the PM who was involved, basically, and his Chief of Staff. And at another level, if you allow me, the political level, because there's also the political level to consider. Quite apart from having to wait for the court to pass judgment on Keith Schembri, that's a political judgment that we should be passing, isn't there? Who is politically responsible for this? Why did we have to drag the country through this for 5 years when we should have done this 5 years ago? From the moment, actually...
But Joseph Muscat took political responsibility.
What
in
political
a sense,
responsibility?
Right? By stepping down.
He was forced to step down because of public protests, for heaven's sake. He would never have done it were it not because of huge pressure piled onto him, were it not because at that point things became much, much worse. Because to add insult to injury, we then had the assassination of the very journalist who was actually revealing all these cases of corruption. So on top of all this mass of corruption, we had the assassination of the person who was revealing it all. That is what led ultimately to Muscat. So
what about Robert Abela? As in, here you've got a Prime Minister now who under his watch, within a year or so, we're seeing action taking place. Now you're saying that's forced action, which you sort of forced the magistrate to look into and investigate. But other people are saying that Robert Abela is showing courage, that he is taking action in a difficult context where there is an assassination, there is lots of corruption, it is originating from within his party, and he's almost radically changed his parliamentary group in the past few months. Do you give him any credit?
I'm sorry, I don't buy this. The last time I checked, his electoral campaign to become party leader and prime minister was continuity. Continuity of what? Of the Muscat government. He has effectively been placed there with the support of Muscat, because the favorite to win was not him, but Chris Fern. What was it that Chris Fern didn't have? Well, he was detached from Muscat, so Muscat was afraid of him, wasn't he? So Robert Abela was elected with continuity, and now, sorry, he has to carry the responsibility for continuity. Robert Abela was an MP under Muscat when all this was happening, including when Daphne was assassinated. Robert Muscat was among the other MPs banging his fist on the desks in Parliament, shouting for Muscat when they were haranguing me in Parliament. Probably this is the clip that you got before we started, wasn't it? So he is part of the same clique, and he has to carry that responsibility. And unless this is done, our country can never recover its credibility. This is what it's all about. This is not some kind of vendetta. This is about the need to come clean,
But what are you suggesting,
to draw the
that
line.
he resigns?
Well, he certainly has to start by saying, I'm sorry. Has anyone apologized? Has anyone said, I'm sorry? Has anyone said...
Have you received any messages from people within Labour to say, we were wrong?
Absolutely not. And their attitude is that they did nothing wrong. So until and unless they change their attitude, they can hardly be part of the solution. They are still the problem. No one said, this is wrong. What happened was wrong. No one said, what happened will not happen again. And this is why justice is so important, Christian, because unless we get justice, it will happen again.
Does it worry you that, Pepe Azzopardi recently wrote an article, it's quite interesting, where he said, if an election were to be held today, even knowing everything we know, the argument is that Joseph Muscat would still get elected, if he was still in politics. Today, if that 2017 election was tomorrow instead, and there was still you and there was still Joseph Muscat, but we knew, what we know today, would it have made any difference?
I cannot reply to that question, honestly. And
isn't it weird that you cannot say that it would make a difference?
Well, the truth is that Joseph Muscat has found the formula how to rig an election, hasn't he? He has given so many jobs. He has given so many promotions. He has given so many permits that were stuck under a PN government to get votes. He has bought so many votes. Now, without that, would he still have won? I don't know, and frankly, I'm out of it today. All I care about is for my country to start rebuilding its reputation, because if we don't do that, then we're in for some very, very tough times.
Have you spoken to Mario De Marco at all? I know that he was your deputy leader at the time. As you know, what we're hearing is affecting a company that he is linked to. What do you expect from him?
No, I have not spoken to Mario, and I don't even need to do that, because as I just said a moment ago, I'm completely out of it. What I care about is for the people who were responsible for this to get what they deserve, to get justice. And primarily, it's the people in power. The Times itself, let's face it, was a victim of what happened. It may have had its faults. It's for the Times to see to that. What I care about as a person in the public sphere is who is the person in power and how has he behaved. And that person is Schembri. That person is Konrad Mitzi. That person is Joseph Muscat. And that person today is also Robert Abela, who is still defending them, or at a minimum, being indifferent to what is happening. How can you imagine or accept that the name, for instance, of Chris Cardona comes out and nothing happens? He's not even arrested after what came out recently. How can you even begin to accept that after yesterday's revelations that Magbridge was owned by the Chinese guy who was negotiating the sale of a 320 million power station, our power station, Malta effectively. They sold Malta to the Chinese for 320 million. And the guy who was negotiating with Konrad Mizzi is the guy behind Magbridge.
So hold on.
Channeling money to Konrad Mizzi and Keith Cambry in kickbacks.
So
and
presumably-
please allow me to finish this sentence. And yet, Konrad Mizzi is still free. What the hell?
Yeah, this
you
one-
know?
this one I'm getting
Why
to.
isn't he
So-
under arrest?
So you're saying that people like Chris Cardona and people like Konrad Mizzi, former ministers, should both be arrested. Is it, and the only arrests we've seen have been a result of the magisterial inquiries that you precipitated. So what's your advice to the current opposition leader, Bernard Grech? Is it to take that same technique that you use and force the institutions to work? Because I guess that's what's happening, right? When the institutions were forced to work, that action was being taken. In this case, it seems that it's not being taken. Or are we misreading that situation, do you
There are
think?
two actions that needs to be taken at two levels. One is institutional, that is to say the police must do their job and not let a citizen like me have to go to court to plead, please can you ask the police to prosecute, you know? That's the first thing. For the institutions to work independently from who is in government. And at a second level, for political action to be taken. Political responsibility does not need to work for a court judgment. So regardless of what is happening in court, the least Roberta Bella should do is I totally and fully disassociate myself from Joseph Muscat. That Joseph Muscat brought my party, the Labour Party, into disrepute. That Joseph Muscat brought Malta into Have you heard him say that? That's what we need.
And your advice to Bernard Grech?
It's not for me to give advice to my successor, frankly. But I did what I did in the context of that time. You know, things have changed now. We know much more about what has happened, and it's for Bernard to handle it in the best way that he can.
What do you think about e-grant now that all of this has come out? Do you think that we will learn more about it in the coming days? Do you think it's significant that Keith Cambry wrote it with a hyphen between the word E and grant?
You know, Chris, frankly, we don't need, because there's more than enough rubbish out there, you know, for want of a better word, for this whole gang to be swept away into the dustbin of history in our country. They have already done too much to our country and its reputation. So, yeah, maybe the truth will come out about e-grant, but do we really need it? Don't we already know enough about what Joseph Muscat did to our country? I say we know more than enough.
And do you think that you called the 2017 election fraudulent? You said that Joseph Muscat and the Labour Party have created the formula of how to rig an election. Do you think an election should be called?
That's a possibility. What I want is, firstly, for the Labour Party to come clean. Because let's face it, I want, the Labour Party is a party of government today, but even if it's in opposition, it's still a huge party in our country. We need it to be clean, just like, of course, we need the PN to be clean. Huh? They are the major political actors. And they have the added responsibility of being the party in government. So they need to act. They need to come clean. Anyone who is remotely associated with Joseph Muscat has to leave. We need to turn a new page. Okay, I know this is Bernard's slogan, but he's right, definitely on that one. We need to turn the page on our country, because unless we do that, we're going to go deeper down in mud than we already are. And in practice, that means more people will lose their jobs. In practice, it means that our most important industries will not be trusted. In practice, it means that to do a job here in Malta, the regulatory environment has become so tough that just yesterday a professional told me it's no longer worth it to do business in Malta. This is what they have brought us to. Why? Because trust has been destroyed, and they are the ones who have destroyed it.
Thank you very much, Simon Busuttil.
It's been a pleasure.
And good luck on your role in Brussels and everything you're doing there. Thank you very much, and have a day full of loving.